Hi guys, in this video we're going to look at the area of the taxation of benefit in kind on company cars. I am preparing these videos to help some students in their upcoming exams. My name is Aidan Moore and I'm the owner of taxaccountinggrinds.ie. And if you have any queries in relation to taxation or any exams or any issues, please feel to reach out. Again, my contact details are on taxaccountinggrinds.ie. So for now, let's get started. So the employee will be taxed on the free use of the company car because that's what they have. They have the free use of a car that they don't necessarily have to pay for. And the amount of tax it's going to be based on the cash equivalent, which we'll look at in the next few moments. But firstly, we'll look at what a car is, and our legislation, our Taxes Consolidation Act, the Red Book 1997, it defines a car in section 121 as it means any mechanically propelled road vehicle constructed or adapted for the carriage of passengers. So it's a general car. If you're interested in looking at the definitions of legislation, by all means, but for the moment we're going to accept that a car is a normal car. That's my car, my Mercedes, I wish. So the amount that we're going to be taxed on here is the cash equivalent, and we need to be able to work that out. How do we work it out? Well, we firstly need to work out or ascertain the original market value. And what that is that's the list price of the car when it was first registered. So it was the list price when it was first registered, and we multiply that amount by a percentage. And the percentage varies between 6 and 30%, but what we're going to see is that the deciding factor is the annual business mileage. So we will need to work out the annual business mileage and apply a factor, which we're going to see in the next few moments. That is actually my car down there, down the bottom right. And that car, I know today it has a market value of, let's say, €5, but when it was first registered back in 1920, it was worth €50,000 or £50,000. So if I was to get that car as a benefit from my employer now, I'd be taxed on the original market value, which would be £50,000 at a certain percentage. So one of the reasons why company cars they're regularly kept up to date is that individuals, employees, they don't want to be taxed on a car that, on a value that is dramatically less than the market value. So we're going to see that the annual rate is up to 30%, and as we mentioned, it depends on the annual business mileage, i.e. the distance travelled. So what we'll look at is how many months are in a year. And I can understand that people are kind of saying, well, obviously it's 12, but the number of people in real life, in practice and in examinations who get that wrong is quite scary. So here's my rates. The rates of BIK, well, if my travel, let's say, between under 24,000 kilometers in a year, it's going to be 30%. And, if it's between 40 and 48, it's going to be 12%. So we need to work out my annual business mileage. And here's a little picture showing that a trip, an employee driving in his car, he's going from home into the office, that is not regarded as a business trip. So normally that's going to be excluded in the calculation of the relevant rate. So here we have a quick example. And we will see that Paul was provided with a company car on the 1st of July 2020, which cost the company $20,000, but had an original market value of $35,000. So what we can see here is straight away is that the OMV, the original market value, is $35K. So although the company bought the car for $20, they're going to tax the employee based on the $35. We need to know if we now need to know what rate. So we know the OMV, 35. We just need to know the rate. The employee pays all costs with the exception of some insurance of $1,500, which Paul pays himself directly to the insurance company. Perfect. Paul drove 36,000 kilometers, of which 20,000 were personal during the year. Okay. So he drove 36,000, of which 20 were personal. So people might be jumping here and going, well, it's 36,000, so it's a factor of 18%. No, because it's the business mileage that we need to factor in. So 36 minus 20 is 16. So everyone might be going, well, it should be 30% because 16 is less than 24,000. And I'm going to disagree, because 16,000 is what he drove in a 6-month period from the 1st of July up until the end of December. So I need to regross it. If he drove 16,000 in a 6-month period, then you could say that he drove 32 in a 12 months. So I would regross it and I would take it to 24%. So I would accept that that his rate is going to be 24%. So let's tax it out. So it's going to be the 35,000 by the 24%, giving him an annual benefit of 8,400. But remember, we're not going to tax him on the annual benefit because he didn't have the car for the year. We're going to tax it on 6/12 of it. So his liability to tax is going to be 4,200. And we can take off this liability, we can take off what he actually paid to his employer. So he incurred costs, amounts he paid to his employer is 0. So he's going to be taxed on 4,200. I know he paid insurance of 1,500 directly to the insurance provider, but that's not going to be accounted. The only amounts that are accounted are the amounts that the employee pays directly to the employer. So the amount of 1,500 is not going to reduce his liability at all. So what would you say to Paul? I would say 2 things to him. Number 1, I would ask him I'd make sure that the company pays the insurance of 1,500 and he reimburses the insurance. And the second thing I would tell him to do is go for a drive, go and collect something from the shop for business purposes, because what you want is you want it to go over to 32,000. You want it to be 32,001 kilometer. So you'll reduce your 24% down to 18%. So you're always looking at your, what's actually happening in reality. So we said we can reduce your BIK liability by the amounts reimbursed by the employee to the employer, nothing else. There is, just for reference, there is an alternative approach that you can reduce that liability. We just calculated that 4,200. We can reduce that down by 20%, where the following 4 conditions are met. Number 1, the employee spends at least 70% of their time working out of the office. They business travel more than 8,000 kilometers a year. They work at least 20 hours a week, and they keep a record. What this is designed for, it's designed for employees out on the road, but they might be in traffic quite a lot of the time, and therefore their mileage might not be high, and therefore maybe potentially unfairly taxed. Electrical vehicles in Ireland, the Finance Act 17, it introduced an exemption, no BIK for electric cars. It's only on, one caveat, it's only on electric vehicles or electric cars with an OMV of up to 50,000. So, for example, if my OMV was 60,000 of my electric car, I'd be taxed on 60 minus 50 at whatever my percentage is. So it will be 10,000 at the relevant percentage. If the OMV of the car is less than 50,000, then there would be no BIK. And the exemption does not apply to the hybrids. It's only relating to purely electric vehicles. There's a kind of just grandfathering and transitional rules over the last couple of years. The Tax and Duty Manual is quite a good source of information, and this applies to electric vehicles and electric cars and electric cars only. Another brief exemption is looking at the company BIK for pooled cars. So this is where the car might be available to maybe a group of employees, to 10 or 15 employees, say. more than one. And if it's used accordingly, if it's actually used by more than one employee with very limited private use, and the car is not kept near the employee's home in the day or night time, then there's going to be an exemption from BIK. There will be no BIK at. Okay, looking at the area of company vans. Well, the most important thing I can say on this is that a car is not a van. And people might be looking at it and kind of saying, well, that's obvious, but just be very mindful of that. In real life or in questions, be mindful, am I dealing with a car or am I dealing with a van? If I am in fact dealing with a van, then the BIK will simply be 5% of the OMV. So I don't care about my business kilometres or so on. It's simply 5% of the OMV. There's no BIK where vans are, if they're used for work and if the employee keeps it at their home, they must be away for at least 80% of the time. So that's a van to me. The distinguishing factors are, one is there's no rear seating, and number two, there's no side windows. The classification, especially for VRT purposes, between a van and a car can be substantial. So just make sure that you're conscious of the differences. Okay, well, that was just a quick summary in relation to the BIK on company cars. If anyone has any further questions or would like any more clarification, please feel free to reach out and let me know. My objective is to post weekly accounting and taxation videos to help you guys in your studies. But as I said, any problems, any questions, there's my contact details, and I hope you got some use or some value out of this. And thank you, and bye for now.